Hello, I'm Joel Blackford with Beth Hesed Sabbath Fellowship at 1631 Ford Parkway, St. Paul, Minnesota. We meet every Sabbath from 11:30 a.m. to sunset. Today's video is going to be interesting for you because it's about the wrath of God or the wrath from Satan. And so, the big topics that people are discussing right now are the Great Tribulation, the rapture, the timing. So, when is it going to occur? And then the wrath of God. Well, this video is on the wrath of God. And I'm going to be arguing that torture and death aren't God's wrath unless you're wicked. And so we'll see if Scripture bears it out. We'll see if you agree with me or not. So once again, as always, I try not to twist the Bible. I try to interpret it as accurately as possible. I test prophecies, whether from the Bible or from modern prophets. And I also test out the news and see if it's fake news or real news. Now, the people that I support and I tend to side with are Mark Biltz, and he is preaching spirit and truth. The spirit is God's spirit actively working within people, and the truth is his Torah, his whole Bible. And so he is the man off to the right-hand side here that came up with the blood moon tetrad at first, and then also just be aware of this, that this goes through 121 of 2019, and there is no pattern after that that we can discern. This has been a pattern for about 9 years, and we think that this is a time frame when the birth pangs should be increasing, and they are. So then we'll find another source. So Mark Biltz is one of the people that helped us to figure this out. Another person that I believe is coming from God is Spirit and Truth coming from P.D. Van der Westhuizen. And he is from South Africa, and he is laying hands on people, and God is healing the people as a result. So he has a Hebrew mindset also. So these are the types of people that I follow. And so he is really talking about if you don't have the gifts that follow, are you really an evangelist for Yeshua? So I follow another person named Sadhu Sundar Severage from India, Chennai, India, and he runs Angel TV. He is a wonderful man. He's really kind of living a simple life, but leads a large ministry. So his comments so far have been: judgment has been set for this nation to be meted out, set to be carried out. Churches that have not been walking right before God have been marked. They put angels, they put a mark on those churches, a huge black cross over many churches. Instead of sheep in those churches, they have wolves, marked for destruction. Two signs will be given to this nation of America. And this is the sign of Noah, intermingling, demonic worship, things like that, and the sign of Lot, which means that you would be taken out supernaturally, but not raptured per se. You would just be moving to another location. And you would be told and warned of the impending destruction. And then finally, I was shown that many angels are appointed for setting fires, opening snow houses, blowing tornadoes. These are the seals, I believe. So I'll be arguing the whole way through the video that blowing tornadoes and snow houses and setting fires and hurricanes and earthquakes, and so that's seismos, and that's limos is plagues, and diseases, which is thanatos, which is death in most cases. It could be limos too, in the Greek. The main thing is that you'll see these things increase, and they should be increasing even more. And I'm going to cite an interesting man in just a little while here that I don't typically cite. So Sadhu is also saying that there will be increased earthquakes in Mexico, Japan, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea. And so he took an 18-month break. He took a sabbatical, and now he's back preaching aggressively about prophecy and about the end of days. So he's telling us this is the generation that we're in. We're in the group that joins with heaven. That's our generation. So we want to be part of the spirit and truth revival. We have to have God's spirit, and we have to be walking in His truth. And this is from his Healing Love video. It is technically in Indian, but it does have the subtitles down below, so you'll be able to see that. Then he also says the Bible tells that He will reveal His wrath upon this group. Those are the people that are not walking in God's way. So we are getting close to that time frame. So he's talking about wrath also. But now he's saying, even for the people that are godly and truly trust in Yeshua, one cut across your neck and it will be just like an ant biting you. So he's warning you of this impending doom, but it's not God's wrath. He's saying this is your destiny as one of God's chosen. So he's citing it in two different ways: God's wrath against the so-called Christians and the wicked of the world. Therefore put to death the earthly parts of your nature, sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed, which is a form of idolatry. For it is because of these things that God's anger is coming on those who disobey him. True enough, you used to practice these things in the life you once lived. That's Colossians 3, 5 through 7. Then 1 Thessalonians 2, 14 through 16 is you suffered the same things from your countrymen as they did from the Judeans, who both killed the Lord Yeshua and the prophets and chased them out too. These so-called Christians, according to Sadhu, are displeasing God and opposing all mankind by and that's modern day today. These are so-called people by trying to keep us from speaking to the Gentiles and from other people so that they might be delivered. This object seems to be always to make their sins as bad as possible, but God's fury will catch up with them in the end. So these are people that Sadhu is arguing are the so-called Christians that are really blocking the witness. And then Satan's wrath is different. So let's give you a couple of verses from Revelation 12. They defeated him because of the Lamb's blood and because of the message of their witness. Even when facing death, they did not cling to life. Therefore rejoice, heaven and you who live there. But woe to you, land and sea, for the adversary has come down to you, and he is very angry because he knows this time is short. The dragon was infuriated over the woman and went off to fight the rest of her children, those who obey God's commandments and bear witness to Yeshua. So that's from Revelation 12. So we see the anger of Satan as he knows he has very little time left, and he's angry at the children, the people walking in God's will. So that is Satan's wrath, but it's not God's wrath. God's wrath is eternal damnation. Satan's wrath is you might get killed. Big deal. Everybody dies. I know it's tough to take, but that's what this video is about. So let's give you the verses that most people cite that say we aren't going to get God's wrath. And let's see if they've twisted it or not. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and uprightness of men, unrighteousness rather of men, who hold the truth in unrighteousness. Okay, that doesn't really say who exactly is who, but that could be lukewarm Christians. And so keep that in mind. So who is God wrathful against? Let's just keep that in mind. So I'm arguing that the wheat and the tares grow together until the end, and we know that from Scripture. But this is 1 Thessalonians 5, 8 through 10. But let us, who are of the day, be sober, putting on the breastplate of faith and love, as a helmet, the hope of salvation. For God did not appoint us to wrath, but to obtain salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ, who died for us, that whether we may wake or sleep, we should live together with him. So, he did not appoint us to wrath, but what if you're lukewarm? Well, then he did. And so he has to come and judge at some point in time on the lukewarm and the ones that reject Yeshua completely. Now, the reason why I believe that certain people are going one direction, which is they don't get the wrath, is that they are grace people. They're generally Calvinists, so they're going to believe in total depravity, which is the T, unconditional election, the U, limited atonement, L, irresistible grace, I, and perseverance of the saints. And I'll explain that more in a minute, although you can pause right now and read if you want to. John Wesley is an Arminian type of a believer, not an Arminian. And so Arminius. He believes in deprivation, conditional election, unlimited atonement, irresistible grace. People can walk away, and assurance and security if you stay in with Yeshua. So I think the people that are arguing in Calvinism against this hyper grace don't understand what that word actually means. And it's going to be inconceivable when things occur in the end times. And they don't understand it because they've been preaching the opposite of all these years. And you're starting to see the signs pick up, so be aware of it. So I'll argue now with the Calvinists. God only chooses to save the Calvinists. That's what they're saying, basically. For their theory to work, all non-Christians must have crazy orgies, kill the babies. So everybody that doesn't believe in Calvinism should have a crazy orgy, kill their babies, and lie and swear profusely because they're totally depraved. Well, we are not totally depraved, not the T, okay? We met despicable pagans and despicable Calvins too, and I've seen that. So you keep in mind, if the Calvinist is beating their children and the non-Calvinist, the non-believer, is loving their children into hell because they're not teaching them about God, what's the difference? Not much. Okay, you unmerited favor. They were elected and you weren't. Sorry. You and your family are supposed to birth babies for hell. Well, that's ridiculous. Okay. And then the next one after that is L. So it's tulip. So L, they limited atonement. They believe Jesus went to the cross only for the Calvinists. He atones only the elect. Well, that's wrong-minded. And then moving on for tulip, and so you'll see grace for them means that they could sin like the devil, and God offers them grace because some were immersed or baptized a long time ago. No, no, grace has been available all the way through. So keep in mind that that anybody can have grace, even Jews that don't believe in Jesus. There is grace for people. And so, because they have a veil over their faces, keep that in mind. Then the last one is P, once saved, always saved, the perseverance of the saints. And so it doesn't work. They believe that you're immersed, and then you can sin like hell, and you're still going to heaven because you're immersed and you're once saved, always saved. No, people walk away from their faith. It happens all the time. So that's why when you see things happen in the end times, don't use the veil of Calvinism to review what's going on in the world. Be more of an Arminian, which is what John Wesley was talking about. And I tend to be more Jewish in the way it is. We believe that you have an inclination to do evil and an inclination to do good. And so that is from the Bible, and it makes sense, and it's more based on Adam and things like that. So just keep that in mind. Now we're going to go into the great day of the Lord and talk about this wrath issue. So the great day of Adonai is near and coming very quickly. Hear the sound of the day of Adonai. When it's here, even a warrior will cry bitterly. That day is a day of fury, a day of trouble and distress, a day of waste and desolation, a day of darkness and gloom, a day of clouds and thick fog, a day of shofar and battle cry, teruah. Now that's the that's the teruah blast. That's the war cry and war call. Against the fortified cities and against the high towers on the city walls, I will bring such distress on people that they will grope their way like the blind, because they have sinned against Adonai. Their blood will be poured out like dust, and their bowels like dung. Neither their silver nor their gold will be able to save them. On the day of Adonai's fury, the whole land will be destroyed in the fire of his jealousy, and he will make an end, a horrible end, of all those living in the land. So keep that in mind. This is God's fury. And who is it coming against? It's the people really that aren't totally connected to him and are just kind of walking in the faith and just going to church each week, but really not truly believing. And so that's from Zephaniah 1:14 through 18. Other verses that match up with this, God's wrath or God's judgment, is here's the final conclusion. Now that you have heard everything, fear God and keep his mitzvot, his commandments. This is what every human being is all about. For God will bring judgment to judgment everything we do, including every secret, whether good or bad. That's from Ecclesiastes 12. A stream of fire flowed from his presence. Thousands and thousands ministered to him. Millions and millions stood before him. Then the court was convened and the books were opened. That's Daniel 7:10. So we know that he will judge us, but it's not necessarily God's wrath. Now, you'll hear some other comments in a little while here too. So I just want to read from Corinthians a couple of passages so you can see how Paul handles this. I am not aware of anything against me, but this does not make me innocent. The one who is evaluating me is the Lord. So don't pronounce judgment prematurely before the Lord comes, for he will bring to light what is now hidden in darkness, and he will expose the motives of people's hearts, and then each will receive from God whatever praise he deserves. Therefore, whether at home or away from home, we try our utmost to please him, for we must appear before the Messiah's court of judgment, where everyone will receive the good or bad consequences of what he did while he was in the body. Then a couple more verses from Hebrews and then Revelation 24. Just as human beings have to die once, but after this comes judgment, so also the Messiah, having been offered once to bear the sins of many, will appear a second time, not to deal with sin. And it's not a second or a third time. It is only the second time. Not to deal with sin, but to deliver those who are eagerly awaiting him. That's Hebrews 9:27 and 28. Then I saw thrones, and those seated on them received authority to judge, and I saw the souls of those who had been beheaded for testifying about Yeshua and proclaiming the word of God, and also those who had not worshipped the beast nor its image, and had not received the mark on their foreheads and on their hands. They came to life and ruled with the Messiah for 1,000 years. That's Revelation 24. So, what's changing? Why am I recording this video? In part because Perry Stone just came out. This is what he just said today, and this is the 25th of July. We're seeing now what I believe are the real beginnings of the birth pangs Jesus talked about in Matthew 24. Now, he has to admit that. He believes in imminence, and we'll talk about that in the next slide. The main thing is that once he admits that these birth pangs are occurring, that's like saying the seals are opening, because what he's citing is found in the seals. And so that means his doctrine of imminence just went down the drain. And that's interesting. So who believes in the doctrine of imminence? Well, Chuck Missler is one of them. And so it's imminent. That means impending, approaching. It's going to happen real quick, not imminent, not eminent. It is imminent. It's going to happen very, very quickly. And that's what they argue with the rapture, that nothing needs to occur before the Great Tribulation and the rapture, you know. And so on the other hand, what you'll look at is, I'm saying in the lower right-hand picture, you'll see beheadings. And I'm arguing against Missler, and Missler's a brilliant man. But you're going to see that the verses that he cites up there, Paul did not seem to include himself among those who looked for Christ's return. That means imminency to him. Timothy was admonished to keep the commandment without spot, rebukable, until the appearing of the Lord Yeshua HaMashiach. Well, that doesn't really say imminence. I mean, the verses that he's citing and kind of twisting are not really citing imminence. And so I think it's better for you to say that there's a scriptural bias for imminence, and that the doctrine of imminence from the standpoint of actual chronology is disarming. It's a false doctrine that threatens to cost the church dearly. And I argue that direction. So, and Perry Stone is starting to argue that too. So just keep that in mind. Here's what's happened the last 2,000-3,000 years. And that's from Fox's Books of Martyrs and all the martyrdoms and things like that that have occurred all of these years. And so this is typical, and you're seeing it then, you're seeing it now, you're seeing it in the French Revolution, you're seeing it with these two lovely young ladies from Europe as they were as they were beheaded. You're going to see more of it. You're going to see much more of it. You saw it with ISIS too. Beheading is a happy ending according to God. So you'll see the rise and fall of the Antichrist. He'll come up very quickly and fall, but in the meantime, your heads will fall. If you believe in Yeshua, you may have to count on that. So let's find a couple more verses that talk about being slain. And this is not the wrath of God. This is the wrath of Satan, according to how you should have seen those verses before. It was given a mouth speaking arrogant blasphemies, and it was given authority to act for 42 months. That's a time, times, and half a time. That's 42 months, of course, 3.5 years. So it opened its mouth in blasphemies against God to insult his name and his Shekinah, and those living in heaven, and it was allowed to make war on God's holy people. That's Hagion. That is what we want to be. That is where we want to be. We want to be as close to God as possible, and he's allowed to make war against us. This is from Revelation 13:5-7, and to defeat them, and was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. But that's against the saints. These are the people that will not receive God's wrath, but they will receive Satan's wrath. So here's 13:8-10 from Revelation. Everyone living on the earth will worship it, except those whose names are written in the book of life, belonging to the Lamb slaughtered before the foundation of the world. Those who have ears, let them hear. If anyone is meant for captivity, into captivity he goes. If anyone is meant to be killed with the sword he will be killed. This is when God's holy people, there's Hagion again, must persevere and trust. So this horrific time frame will bring the death of many, many people by martyrdom. Daniel 7:24 talks about it the same way. And Hagion, now that is the Hebrew word, the Greek word, but it is kedoshim in the Hebrew, so it's basically the same thing. So as for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom 10 kings will arise, and yet another will arise. This sounds just like Revelation 13. And now he will be different from the earlier ones, and he will put down 3 kings. That sounds like Revelation 13 too. And he will speak words against the Most High and try to exhaust the holy ones, the Hagion of the Most High. He will attempt to alter the seasons and the law, and the holy ones will be handed over to him for a times, and half a time. That's 42 months or 3.5 years. When the court goes into session, he will be stripped of his rulership, the beast will, and will be consumed and completely destroyed. So that's Daniel 7:24-26. It's real consistent, isn't it, people? Revelation and Daniel. And here's another way of saying it from Daniel 8. In the latter part of their reign, when the evildoers have become as evil as possible, there will arise an arrogant king, the Antichrist, skilled in intrigue. His power will be great, but not with the power of the power of the first king had. He will be amazingly destructive, and he will succeed in whatever he does, and he will destroy the mighty and the holy ones. That's Hagion for 42 months, we believe. It doesn't say that, but it sounds like it because it's been consistent throughout Scripture. And he will succeed through craftiness and deceit, become swelled with pride, and destroy many people just when they feel the most secure. He will even challenge the Prince of Princes, but without human intervention he will be broken. The Antichrist will be, and the vision of the evenings and mornings which has been told is true. But you are to keep the vision secret because it is about days in the distant future. That's where we are right now. Daniel 12 handles it, and it doesn't say Hagion, it says Hagiadzo, which is holy people. I mean, it's very similar, very similar. So let's look at Daniel 12. One of them asked the man dressed in linen who was, how long will these wonders last? And the man dressed in linen, who was above the water of the river, raised his right hand and left hands towards heaven and swore to him who lives forever that it would be a time, times and half. That's 42 months, again, 3.5 years. And that it would be when the power of the holy people, the Hagiadzo, is no longer being shattered, that all these things will end. I heard this, but I couldn't understand what it meant, so I asked, Lord, what will be the outcome of all of this? And he said, go your way, Daniel, for these words are to remain secret and sealed until the time of the end, and we're getting to that time right now. Daniel 12 continues, many will purify, cleanse, and refine themselves, but the wicked will keep on acting wickedly, and none of the wicked will understand, but those with discernment will understand. From the time the regular burnt offering is taken away, and the abomination that causes desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days. So that's 42 months plus 30 days. How blessed will it be for anyone who waits and arrives at the 1335? So that's another 75 days plus 3.5 years. So, but you, go your way until the end comes. Then you will rest and find and rise for your reward at the end of days. I want to cite this person. I don't know who the person is, but this is what their comment is. So this is called Worthy Christian Forums. It seems like a very godly place. I put that picture off to the right-hand side of the beheading, so just know that that's an overlay. The main thing is they're called Light Shines in the Darkness from January 21st of 2018, and most people disagreed with them, but we're going to lay out what they happen to say. The Lord is coming back on the last day of the tribulation, which is also the last day of time period. He is not coming twice or during the middle of the tribulation. He is not coming in secret. Every eye will see him when he returns. At that time, the dead will be raised, and those saints who remain alive on the earth will be changed and caught up to meet the Lord in the air. All Christians will go through the tribulation, which is for the testing of the faith of the saints. That's Revelation 3:10 also. But 13 talked about it, as well as the time of God judging the unsaved world. The persecution of the saints during this time is not the wrath of God, but the wrath of Satan, which is by God's will and according to his plan. And here's the verses that I've already read to you. The judgments of God will be falling and unsaved people on unsaved people during this time, not on the Christians, and Satan will be persecuting the saints during this time. So God's judgment against the unsaved people, but Satan will be persecuting the saints. Get used to it. And this is, once again, light shines in the darkness. So most true, not fake Christians will fall away from the Lord and will be overthrown during the tribulation. Most of the saints who remain faithful to Jesus during the time of tribulation will be martyred, not raptured, on the last day. Being killed for not taking the mark of the beast is not defeat, but victory. Taking the mark is being conquered. That's God's thoughts, and that matches with Scripture. This is an important message. This time is very short, and so that was from that person. Now, here's another person I trust, and I know this person. This is Carla Smith, and she's just a wonderful person. So her blog is called A Daughter of Messiah, and this is from July 18th, Turning a Blind Eye, and I just wanted to quote a few things from her. She's saying God's in complete control right now. Nothing happens that he does not allow. And those who can stand beside me except my son, and so no one can except Yeshua, because he gave his life to redeem all of creation. His life was given so that my creation could walk in fellowship with me. Look at the signs all around you. Can you not see? Warning after warning, birth pang after birth pang upon you, until a man chooses not to see that judgment is upon the earth. Man chooses to turn a blind eye. So she's saying, thus saith the Lord here too. A man is turning a blind eye to the truth of his word and walking in darkness as though they see clearly. They think everything is well right now. We're just going through another economic downturn and flooding and other things like that. No, 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 no. We are in the birth pangs right now. Carla Smith, one more page of this. They turn a blind eye to the gross sin, allowing it to remain instead of stopping it at the root. Laws allowing gross sin to replace my laws will always lead to death. Man is dead in their trespasses, but think they're fine. I say prepare, prepare, prepare. My hand of judgment to shake the nations will happen soon. Judgments that will change man's perspective in a moment. Within a blink, all will change. And that is what we're wondering will occur. You know, it just seems like we've been waiting for this for a few months, but God's very slow. He's long suffering. So man can't judge God. This is how it's going to work. And so get used to it. When that blink occurs, it's going to all change. So that's from Carla. And oh, I'm sorry, I have another page here. Be prepared to help all who look to you for help and understanding. Thousands will need guidance. Do not put your trust in any man or government, because I am your guidance and redeemer. And can sin go unpunished? No, not really. In my word, it is clear that sin raises itself up against my laws and brought down through my righteous judgments. Make yourselves ready. Stay in my word. Seek me diligently. Ask me to show you how to prepare your mind for what you will see and hear. Hearts will fail, man, when they see how evil man can be. Prepare, stay before me. So Satan's wrath will come against us, man's wrath against man, but it is not God's wrath against us. Now, I'm arguing in the last video, and I'll be arguing it in many videos in the future, that the first 6 seals, or the 7 you could call it too for that matter, are the birth pangs. They're just the beginning of the birth pangs. And so I argue that, and so little babies know that mommy's going through the birth pangs and mom's going to birth a baby, and so we should be aware of that too. You should correspond Matthew 24 with Revelation 6 through 1 through 17. They just match up so much, so just keep that in mind. And of course, I believe that these are the birth pangs. So seal 1 is west, seal 2 is east, seal 3 is north, seal 4 is south, and I'll explain them more in the next slide. Seal 5 is the martyrdom, and then seal 6 is the burning figs, which is like Sodom and Gomorrah in Egypt, and an earthquake, a great one. So seal 1, I believe, kicked off in 1967 when they turned back the Temple Mount area. That was when you started to notice Western civilization crumbling, and it's crumbling fast now. The second seal is George Bush and Dick Cheney's wars east of Jerusalem, starting in Iraq in 2001 through 2003, you know, with 9/11, and then it's just continuing on. And they kicked the hornet's nest, and it's keeping the hornets are still stinging. The third seal. That's the only one that I have to time date stamp, and that was sometime during the summer of 2012, but I thought it would be about Av9 based on what he mentioned to me. That means your food prices are going to go through the roof, so keep in mind you might want to stock up. Now, people are saying that all over the place. The fourth seal, when you see that, 1.8 billion people will die. That's thanatos in the Greek. It's just death, and it will come from thanatos, from famine, which is limos, from plagues, which is thanatos again, and therion, which is yeast like diseases that get spread around from touching and from just contact. Martyrdom of the believers comes in the 5th seal, and then you know about the 6th seal. So now we're going to cover a few things. This is a verse that's not scriptural by what you would believe, but it's from Enoch, and it does pertain, so I want you to see this. In those days, when God hurls out against you the terror of fire, where shall you flee, and where shall you find safety? When he flings his word against you, will you not faint in fear? And all the luminaries shall faint with great fear, and the whole earth shall faint and tremble in panic. And the Malachim, the angels, shall fulfill their orders, and the children of the earth shall seek to hide themselves from the presence of God, the great splendor, trembling and confounded. You sinners, you are accursed forever. There is no shalom, lo shalom. And that's the second seal. That's what it basically says in the Hebrew for the second seal. Lo shalom. Doesn't say polemos, which would be war. But by saying lo shalom, we know that means war or battles. But you, souls of the righteous, fear not and be hopeful. Your souls that died in righteousness. That's Enoch 102. And then Revelation 20. Next I saw a great white throne, and the one sitting on it. Earth and heaven fled from his presence, and no place was found for them. And I saw the dead, both great and small, standing in front of the throne. Books were opened, and another book was opened, and the book of life. And the dead were judged from what was written in the books, according to what they had done. The sea gave up the dead in it, and death and Sheol, that's thanatos there, gave up the dead in them, and they were judged, and each according to what he had done. Death and Sheol were hurled into the lake of fire. This is the second death. the lake of fire. Anyone whose name was not found written in the book of life was hurled into the lake of fire. That's Revelation 20:11 through 15. That's the end of the video. What I hope I did was prove to you that these birth pangs are similar to what you're seeing in Matthew 24. Well, obviously it's listed there, but that's the Revelation 6, chapter 6 seals, and that also it's God's wrath, which is eternal damnation for some and righteousness for others. But Satan's wrath is what's coming at the doorstep. It's very, very soon, people. God bless. Bye bye.